Turning to cement, Mr. Birla, UltraTech is expanding capacity, you're adding another 10 million. Does it mean that UltraTech's earnings will continue to remain under pressure, or are there ways in which you can protect its margin and expand capacity at the same time?
So the plan actually is to add 25 million tons in the next 5 years, of which 9 million tons have been articulated in terms of the specific investments in Karnataka and in East India. Again, I think we are working off a very strong balance sheet. We have virtually no debt on that balance sheet. And the bulk of this investment would come from internal accruals and debt, given that we have huge headroom to take on debt on UltraTech's balance sheet. So I think that given the fact that all of these investments would obviously be value accretive, whilst you could see a little bit of a blip for a while, for a year or two, I think that we're talking about a much larger company going forward. So you have the largest cement player today only growing in size and increasing its market share. So I think that's a very compelling story.
Now, as a group, you're already probably among you're 7th or 8th globally in terms of your cement capacity. And I know that you're not happy with being just number 7 or 8. You want to be at least among the top 3. So do we see or can we expect some big bang acquisitions in cement from the group going ahead? And if yes, which parts of the world would you want to acquire?
So there's nothing on the table today. But having said that, I think that it's a sector which will see consolidation globally in the next 4 or 5 years. I think that most cement majors around the globe have very high levels of debt on their balance sheet. How the consolidation game would play out is very difficult for me to predict. But having said that, growth through acquisition is something that we are very familiar with, comfortable with, and we would look at any opportunity from a value creation perspective.
But would you make another bold bet like you did in the case of Novelis by acquiring a company which was much larger than Hindalco? Do you see that happening in cement as well?
So, Novelis has bolstered our confidence in a way. And I think that if we have, theoretically speaking, a similar opportunity in the cement sector, I don't see why we wouldn't look at it.
You also have 2 holding companies, and markets aren't particularly fond of holding companies. In fact, AV Nuvo trades at a steep discount to its inherent value. So why do you have 2 holding companies? What is the need for it, and what's your plan going ahead with these holding companies?
So I don't see Grasim as a holding company because it has a large operating business. In the case of Nuvo, it is a semi-holding company. The fact remains that it's incubated 2 very large businesses in the last 10 years, which is telecom and financial services. And these are businesses which have very long gestation periods. Both of these are only now starting to become value accretive because that's the nature of the industries that both of these businesses are in. So I think that you'll see a lot of value coming through in terms of valuation of Nuvo in the next year, 2 years. I think that it's grossly undervalued today. Valuations have improved somewhat on the back of very strong performance in the last 3 or 4 quarters. But I still believe that there's huge headroom for revaluation of the Nuvo stock.
So what would you say is an appropriate price?
So wouldn't want to mention a specific number except to say that I think it's grossly undervalued. And I think that anyone who does an analysis of Nuvo in terms of its investments, its earnings, I think would very clearly discover that.
But as a promoter, what would you rather do? Own a smaller pie of a more valuable company, or own a larger stake in a company that's probably less valuable?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think it would have to be on a case-by-case basis, Sri. Depends on the industry, depends on how important it is to be a dominant player in that industry. Whilst dominance is a theme that runs across our businesses in terms of a business philosophy. But it really depends on the sector and the specific opportunities that we're talking about.
And Mr. Birla, you always maintain that you'd want your companies to be among the top 3 in any industry. So from that perspective, how do you look at financial services, retail, and even BPO?
I think, again, that's a very important issue. When we say top three, we are either top three in our existing businesses today, or the more important thing is that for the businesses where we are not in the top three today, we need to have visibility on how we'll get to be in the top three in the foreseeable future. Let's say in the next 5 years, do we have what it takes to come into a top three position? And I believe that for all of these three businesses, we have very clearly chalked out plans. I think we have the wherewithals in terms of the talent, the financial resources, and the track record to be in the top three in these businesses in the next 5 years.
Now, the new acquisition norms allow promoters to increase their stake by 5% every year. Do you have any plans of increasing your stake in group companies?
Yes, I mean, we've said that very explicitly in the past that we will use the creeping acquisition route to increase promoter holding across our companies.
Right. And on your priority list, which are these companies where you want to begin with first?
I think in terms of priority, it's important for all the companies, but I think first on the priority list clearly is Grasim.
And Mr. Birla, there are also constant rumors that you will at some point exit telecom.
Idea is a very, very strong franchise. It's moved from being a complete non-entity 3 years ago to being a very strong player. It's in the top three in terms of mobile telephony in that space. Like I said, it's grown at a rate of 20% this year as compared to 10% for the industry as a whole. We have a very healthy customer base of high ARPU customers. So I don't see the rationale for us wanting to exit. I know that these rumors keep coming in and out, but that's completely untrue.
But how do you look at this whole 2G spectrum allocation, the subsequent scams which have come to light, and Idea Spice itself is embroiled in a controversy with DOT. So first of all, your reaction to this whole 2G spectrum allocation, the scam, and the way it's been dealt with?
So I think that, clearly as we all know, the 2G scam has been a very unfortunate incident. I'd want to very quickly, on the heels of that, add that the Idea issue has nothing to do with the scam. We clearly not a part of the scam. I think that's an issue of overlapping licenses on account of the Spice buyout, and which is a more technical issue. So very clearly, our issue is very different from what you're calling this scam issue. But I think that very clearly the Idea growth story is a very strong one going forward. I think the 2G fracas has been a very unfortunate one. But I think that we need to, as an industry, move forward with doing the things that are required to make this a more healthy industry now.
The new telecom policy talks about getting telecom companies to pay market prices for any megahertz that they have more than 6.2. What's your view on that?
Well, I think that I don't think that it's entirely warranted. But having said that, I think the more important thing in terms of policy is now to focus on the M&A guidelines, because that potentially can be a game-changing policy for the industry.
So would you want to acquire or maybe bring in a strategic investor in Idea?
We clearly have no plans to bring in a strategic investor because, like I said, no rationale, no reason for us to bring in a strategic investor. Idea is doing very well, growing across its markets. In terms of acquisition, I don't see the logic to do that again. But I think that easing of the M&A norms will create a more consolidated and a more healthy telecom sector.
How do you expect this fight that you have with DOT on this Idea Spice merger, how do you expect it to end? What will be the resolution to this fight?
So I think that we need a clear direction from DOT. We've been writing to them since the time of the merger, asking for clarity on what they want us to do. And, we are very open to any option that they recommend. If they want us to surrender license, we've kept that license in a virtual escrow. We haven't used that so-called excess license, and we're very happy to surrender that.
So what are your expectations from 3G? Do you think it's going to be a game changer for the industry, or is it just another service and may not significantly turn around the fortunes of the industry?
So I think there was, for the longest time, this debate about would 3G actually be something that could be game changing. And I think that we've all come around to the view as an industry that it is something that could potentially move the needle. So, like I was saying, 3G is a service that can give an edge to Idea over competition. And I think that the investment that we've made has been very cautiously thought through. And I think that we're pretty confident of a very successful launch sometime at the end of March. And that would be another inflection point in the growth story of Idea. It's the regulatory environment in the telecom sector that is essentially to blame. I think that investments should flow to geographies where you create the maximum value. So it depends from business to business. I don't have a view that we must invest in India. I have great admiration for Jack Welch, and he in some sense has been a role model for me.